the applications of that today. Okay. So are you ready then? Okay. So first we'll start with what is called as EMF equation of a transformer. So this one actually is more basic than the ideal transformer that we discussed last time, but then it is nice to know this equation, EMF equation. Okay. So basically what we are saying is, this is the transformer, this is the primary winding, this is the secondary winding. So here I am connecting a alternating voltage source, then it will circulate some current I, and then some EMF is induced E1, okay, or capital E1. So there are N1 turns here, there are N2 turns here. This is number of turns. Okay. So this all you already seen. So there is a flux phi created because of this current, and then the voltage is V1 and all. So what is the relation between V1 and E1? V1 is the terminal voltage which is applied, and E1 is the EMF induced in the first winding. Okay. If you don't consider any voltage drops or anything like that, then both are equal. Okay. So now from I think Faraday's laws of electromagnetic induction, there is this expression that E equal to N d phi by dt. Okay. So there will be a minus sign to just indicate that it is opposing the cause of that change in the flux. Okay. This one is the basic law. Now if I want E1, there is E1, E2, N1, N2. So I can write it E1 will be N1 kind of thing. Because the flux is same for both of them, the same flux is linking with both of them. So there is no phi 1, phi 2 like that. It's like that. Okay. And you know that the flux is also sinusoidal, because the current is sinusoidal, the flux is also sinusoidal. So I can write it in the form of equation something like this. Maximum flux, oh I think I forgot to put d by dt sin omega t. So this is nothing new, you already know, just I am replacing the this one with, see what is the difference between phi and phi m? Phi m is a constant maximum value of flux, and then sin omega t is there. Omega is the frequency of which I am applying this one 2 pi f. Okay. So if I simply differentiate it, I will get minus n1 into omega. Okay. So that omega I will write it, okay, I will write it in the next step. Cos omega t, phi 1 also I will write it here, phi m. Okay. Just this is a constant, comes outside, and then sine becomes cos, and omega will come out. So it's just a simple differentiation, nothing new. Okay. So what is omega? It is nothing but 2 pi f. Okay. So let me write that, minus 2 pi f n1 phi m. Okay, this all is one, this one, and then cos omega t. Okay. So again I can replace cos with sin omega t, and then minus 90 degrees, just to indicate that the EMF will be lagging the flux by 90 degrees. So all that vector diagram also you have seen. Okay. Now this is actually I should write it E1 in with respect to time. This is in the form of time equation. Okay. Now if I again convert into vectors kind of thing, then see this whole is the maximum value. Okay. How to convert the maximum value into RMS value? Divide by root 2, that you already know. So I will write it E1 equal to 2 pi by root 2. Okay. So I am neglecting the minus sign, I am neglecting the phase, all the thing, I am just only worried about the magnitude of induced EMF. So I will get it f n1 phi m. Okay. And also this phi m is what? Total flux, maximum amount of flux. Okay. Now flux per unit area is the flux density. Okay. So I can change it as Bm into A. Okay. Where Bm is the flux density maximum, and then A is the area of cross section of the core. So this core has some area of cross section. So that one, just only simple again replacement. Okay. So now this 2 pi by root 2 I can numerically calculate. So it turns out that it comes E equal to 4.44 F N1 BM A. Okay, so this is the EMF equation. Same thing I have written. Just this term it will become 4.44. F is same, N1, BM and A. Okay. So that phase and all these things, minus sign and all, I am currently neglecting. Okay. So just I have not done anything very complicated. Just replaced d phi by dt and then just differentiated. Okay. So now more important is what is the discussion about this one. Okay. So this is E1. So I'll just erase this if you had noted down. See, I can write E2 equal to 4.44 F N2 B max and A. Okay. So this is just by observation I can write it because the same E2 is the EMF induced here. Okay. Now I can ask a question. What is the E1 dependent upon? Okay. So if I have more turns, then I'll get more EMF induced. So E is proportional to N. Okay. And then BM. BM is a maximum flux density. Okay. Now if I have maximum more and more flux density in this core, I can get more EMF. Okay. So if I am a designer of a transformer, my interest will be to increase the number of turns, increase the flux density. But this flux density cannot be increased indefinitely. It is like you have a road, how many vehicles can go through that road? Okay. So at a time you can, if you want to really in a very coordinated way send a lot of vehicles, you can send, but then after a point the road itself will become saturated. In the same way, this core also, the core material, whatever material you are using, like some kind of I don't know, some kind of ferrite material they call it, which is used here. Different materials will be able to have different amounts of flux density pass on through them. Okay? So you choose such a material where the maximum flux density can be passed on, and that is so-called ferrite material. It can take more and more flux density. So that we can know here. Now A. So the problem is if you make A smaller, then your E is smaller, but the transformer size is smaller, cost is small and all these things. But then if you want more EMF induced, then you have to make it A increase. Again, it increases the cost and all these things. Okay? So just only to get you general idea about what is the aspects of a designer who is designing the transformer. Okay? They can play with all these variables. Okay? So there are some research or some kind of this thing where they are using a high frequency transformers. Instead of 50 hertz, they use like 500 hertz or 5 kilohertz kind of thing. Then if the frequency is very high, then they can induce the EMF with less number of turns and less area. Okay, so for doing the same amount of step up, step down, for a high frequency transformer, it will be smaller size compared to the normal frequency transformer. So that's why in electronic, you will find small transformers in your electronic boards also, electronic equipment. There, because they use high frequency, the transformers are smaller. Okay, so like that. So anyway, so that I think is the enough discussion. Yes. Yeah. So frequency is actually determined by your supply. Okay. So as long as you are fixed to that supply, then your frequency is not in your control. So you will have to design the transformer assuming that the frequency is 50 hertz or 60 hertz or whatever. Okay. But then if there is a possibility that you're like, let's say you are generating some solar power. Okay. So then you are getting output is DC. Okay. Then you might use some kind of power electronic converter. That DC you convert to some high frequency AC. So something like 500 hertz or something like that, and then that one you can use step up, step down, transmit and things like that. So there are some kind of people who have done this kind of research about why to stick to that frequency of 50 hertz and all. So high frequency power distribution systems with using all these power electronic devices and all these things. So that's a very new and advanced topic, so which we will not go into. Okay. So our objective is to learn the fundamentals. Okay, so what is the fundamental? If you just divide these two, so you get E1 by E2 equal to N1 by N2. Okay, like this. Okay. So actually I will write it in the reverse way. E2 by E1 equal to N2 by N1, which is equal to K, which is transformation ratio. So of course, should you use N1 by N2 or N2 by N1 to represent K and all is always a matter of confusion. So now you may remember until the exam, but then later on you will again forget. So don't worry about it. As long as you use this ratio, the EMF will be proportional to turns. So yeah, so you can consider it as output secondary number of turns by primary number of turns is equal to K. Okay. So how to use this K? It will come later. I am just defining that. Okay. So I think I will not waste more time on this point. So let's maybe we'll quickly do one problem on this so that you get some idea what it is. I'll just give you the question. Okay, so the question is something like this. For a particular transformer, so this is the given data. N1 equal to 400, N2 equal to 1000. So these are turns. And then area is 60 centimeters square. That means the cross section area of this core is 60 square centimeters. Okay. So, and the supply frequency is 50 hertz, and then V1 equal to 520 volts. Okay. So now the question is, what is the maximum flux density, and what is the induced EMF E2? Okay. So this is very easy. So for your information, this is example 32.3. Okay, example problem 32.3 in the book which I said, that is Electrical Technology by B.L. Tereja. So it's very easy. You can just, everything is known here. So what you do, one thing you know is V1 value is given. So since you are right now not considering any voltage drops or anything, V1 is nothing but E1. Okay, so I can directly substitute that. Okay, so 520 equal to, okay, now in the place of 4.44 I'll keep same 4.44. Now in the place of frequency is 50. In the place of N1 I can keep 400 turns, 400. In the place of BM, that's what is unknown. So maximum flux density, and area is 60 centimeters square. So I have to convert into 10 power minus 4 meter square. Okay. So just converting centimeter square into meter square. So this formula assumes that A is in the meter square. Okay. So that's all. So so from all these things you can calculate what is BM. Okay. So 520 divided by 4.44 divided by 50 divided by 400 divided by 60, and then again divided by 10 power minus 4. Okay. So can someone quickly try that? So in the case of E2, so N2 is 1000 by 400 into E1, which is 520. Okay, so this is again a simple calculation. So this 4 ones, 4 3s are 12, 130. So this is like 1300 volts. Okay. So that's the second part. So what is BM you are getting? How much? 0.976 I think. So this is Webers per meter square. Okay, so this is the unit of the flux density. Okay, so you know that Webers per meter square is nothing but Tesla. So it's another word. So this is almost equal to 1 Tesla. So typically that is the number. Whenever people say flux density, it will be near to 1, 1.2, 1.5, so something like that. Okay. The more, that's a material property. Okay, so I think we'll not waste more time on that. We'll go ahead with the next concept in this. Okay, so I'm erasing this. So this is okay, no load transformer. So already last week we discussed this. So just today I'll quickly revise and then we'll see some problems. So one of this I'll also remove. In fact, both I'll remove. So what I said last time, you have an ideal transformer and you have N1, N2 turns and you have a core. Then whenever you connect an alternating voltage, you will get some current and that current is represented as I naught. Okay. Now ideally speaking, in the place where there is no losses at all, I naught will be 90 degrees angle with V1. Okay. So if I draw the vector diagram, I'll get V1 is vertical, I naught is like this. Okay. So then because of the I naught there is a flux. Okay. So the flux will be in phase with I naught. Okay. And because of that flux there will be EMF induced E1, E2. Okay. So which is again 90 degrees lagging. Okay. So that will be E1 and then E2. Now the length of E1, E2 depends on the ratio. Of course V1 equal to E1 in this example. So because we are not considering any voltage drops or anything. So and then I am getting like this. Okay. Now there is no I2. So I2 is equal to 0 because the topic we are talking is no load. That means there is nothing connected here. Okay. So what is V2 then? V2 is nothing but E2. The terminal voltage nothing but the induced EMF. Okay. So this is ideal transformer. Okay. So I hope you have you recall this. Yes. Now, yeah, so there is always this issue where the E1 is down or up. So you can always consider E1 as down or up by defining a different reference for E1. So right now I'm thinking E1 to be here by some kind of notation that this is plus and this is minus, but you can always adjust it. Okay, so depending on your problem, depending on what you are doing, you can it's a matter of your convention how you want to do it. So later on if you want to change E1, at the time of changing I'll tell you what we will be doing there. So here if you see strictly V1 is equal to minus E1. Why? Because if you just look at the diagram, V1 is nothing but minus of E1. Okay? But then if I define V1 as equal to E1 and like it's like a change of reference. Okay? So then you can consider V1 as equal to E1. See, even if the ground is same, I can always define this as a positive and this as a negative. Okay. Then see, like there's a wire, I can define current is like this I1, or I can define another current something like I2. Okay. So which one is correct? Is I2 is a current or I1 is a current? So it can be both. So I1 if the actual current, if I put an ammeter, okay, and then the ammeter is plus minus like this, ammeter also has a plus minus, okay, and if the current it reads is let's say 3 amperes plus 3 amperes, that means what do you say, I1 equal to plus 3, okay, and I2 equal to minus 3. Okay, so both of them are correct. But then I can always define something like I2 I2A, just a name, okay, is nothing but reverse of I1, sorry, reverse of I2. If I define like that, then this I2A will be equal to I1, okay, so something like that, okay. So in order for you to avoid the confusion, let's say if this is E1, okay, I'll invent another something like this, okay, with a line like this, okay. So it's also for pronouncing I'll call it E, but then it's a different E, okay. So then I'll say this is nothing but here I will write it like that. Okay? So it's like it's a matter of notation only. Okay. I agree. It used to disturb me a lot, and I had to when I was studying and all, I had to worry a lot about it. But then, so even we will turn it upwards when we are doing a problem. So as I did last time, you will see that why it is going up. Okay. So now this is actually ideal transformer. So now let's come to no load transformer with core losses. Okay, so what if you consider core losses? Yes, last week we discussed that how to model core losses. You assume that V1 and I0 are 90 degrees each other, then there is actually no active power taken by the transformer. But if you physically connect a transformer in the laboratory, a practical transformer, you will notice that some active power is also going. It's not purely inductive, purely reactive power. Some kind of active power is going. But the output is 0. So you consider where is this active power going? Why it is drawing the active power when there is no load? Then the answer is that this iron core which is there, that because the flux is alternating in that, the core is getting heated up and it is consuming some power. Okay? So to model that, we say that the angle between V1 and I1. So if V1 angle is 0 degrees, then you have I1 with an angle of something like, so let's call it I0, not I1, no load current, and some phi 0, some angle will be there. This angle is slightly less than 90 degrees. Okay, so maybe 85 degrees, 80 degrees, or sometimes even 75 degrees, depending on the design of the transformer. Okay. Then what happens is we will get two components out of this I. So the horizontal component, let's call it I mu, and vertical component, let's call it IW. So it will be more clear if I draw it here. I0. So this is actual I0. So the horizontal component, let's designate it as I mu, and then this component, let's designate it as IW. Okay. So the terminology is I mu is magnetizing component of I0, and then IW working component of I0. Okay, so this is just the terminology. Now if I write V1 into IW, so this will be power. Okay, this is core losses in watts. Okay. So this is what it's actually nothing but V1 into I0 into cos phi 0. Okay, where this whole part is IW. Okay, so V1 into I1 into cos of the angle between them. This is phi 0. Okay. So that is nothing but the working component of the current. Okay. So that small, you can actually measure it. You can, in fact, that's what we'll discuss in the next class. That is the open circuit test of a transformer. You take a transformer, open circuit the secondary, connect a voltage to the primary, find out how much current is flowing and all this thing. So this kind of actual testing is also done to determine what is the value of IW and all. So I think that's all. There's not much of theory, just only introducing these two terms. Okay. So let's look at a quick problem. to find it. So now this is the this one. So I think you can immediately write some things like this: I0 equal to IW square plus I mu square under root. Okay, this is just a triangle kind of this thing. Okay, so I naught vector equal to IW plus J I mu. Okay, or one of them. You can give J here or J there, depending on your thinking of what it is. Or I can write it I naught cos phi naught plus J I naught sin phi naught. So again, this is again nothing new. If you know vectors, this all is intuitive to you. Okay? So all these things will apply. So in this, if you know two of them, then you can always find the other one. I think we will see a problem in that it will be there. Okay? So let me, there are more complicated things we'll discuss later, so I will give a problem right away. So, okay, so the question is like this. I think this is example 32.9 in that book again. So 2200 by 200 volts one phase transformer. Okay, so this is the voltage rating of the transformer. Primary side is 2200 volts and secondary side is 200 volts. This is a step down transformer, one phase. Okay, then draws a no load primary current of 0.6 amperes. No load I naught equal to 0.6 amperes. Okay, so they measure the current, okay, and absorbs 400 watts of power. Okay, so P0 I'll write it 400 watts. This much power it is consuming. Okay, how do you know how much power it is consuming? You connect a wattmeter. Okay, the wattmeter measures the active power it is consuming. Okay? Find the magnetizing and iron loss currents. Okay, so find I mu and then IW. Okay, so IW you can find right away. Okay, so how do you find IW right away? So you know that the rated voltage is 2200 in the primary side. Okay, so 2200 into IW should be equal to 400 watts. Okay, so this is volts, this is amperes, so it should be this many watts. That's what is given. So how do you get IW? 400 by 2200, 4 by 22 or 2 by 11. How much is that? .181 amperes. Okay. Now this is the IW. So how to get I mu? So simple triangle law you apply. So you know this one, you know this one, so you don't know this one. So simply I naught square minus IW square under root, you will get the I mu. Okay, so that is 0.6 square minus 0.181 square under root. So how much are you getting for this one? How much? So is it 0.42 what you are saying? So you just check it. I can't confirm the number, but it's just, so it is easy to calculate that way. Now I'll give you some two important points here. So point number one is that what about copper losses? See, when the current is flowing in this coil, some resistance may be there and there will be some losses in the copper part. Okay? The copper losses I can conveniently neglect. I can say that this whole 400 watts is only towards the iron losses. Iron losses means the core losses, because the actual current will be much higher. Like this current you're getting 0.6 amperes. typically this is like 1 or 2% of the full load current. Okay. Because it is very small current is enough to set up the flux in the coil. So this no load current is percentage wise it's only 1, 2, 3% of the overall current. Okay. So I cannot claim that the copper losses are significant there. So I can say this entirely whatever open circuit power it is taking, it's all purely iron loss. Okay, so I can write it. This is nothing but iron loss. What? So yeah, 0.576. I think this is the correct answer. So just a calculation. Okay, so this one is the iron loss, and then also note that this I naught is a very small quantity. Okay. So see, I had given power and I naught like this. Okay, I can change the problem. Just again pay attention here. Instead of giving this power, I could say, I would say the no load current is 0.6 amperes at 0.3 power factor lagging. So instead of giving the watts how much power, I am just giving the power factor. Okay, so under no load the power factor will be very less power factor. Okay, so 0.3. Now this is nothing but cos of phi naught. So what is power factor? Cos of angle between voltage current. Okay, so if this V1 is your voltage and then I naught is your current and then this is phi naught. So what is given here is 0.3 power factor is nothing but cos of I naught. Okay, so now if I want to find these two, I can right away write IW is nothing but I naught into cos phi naught, or nothing but I naught into power factor, because cos phi naught itself is power factor. So it's very easy now. 0.6 into 0.3, so 0.18 amperes. Okay, so I got the IW. Okay, so how to find I mu? So you can use the same procedure, 0.6 square minus 0.18 square under root and all these things, or you can also think of like this. If cos of phi naught is 0.3, then what is phi naught? So cos inverse of 0.3. Okay, so you will get some angle. Then you take the sine of that angle, sine of phi naught. You will get some factor. Then that factor you multiply with I naught. Again you will get the same number. Okay, so there is different ways of doing it. Okay, so what is the cos inverse of 0.3? Just for understanding, cos inverse of 0.3 in degrees, how much is the angle? Degrees, cos inverse of 0.3. See, the cos will be like this, right? This is 0 degrees, this is 90 degrees. Cos will start at 1 and then it will go to 0. Okay, I am asking where is 0.3. So 0.3 how much? Yeah, so approximately 72 degrees. Okay, just remember that. Cos inverse of 0.3 is 72. Okay, so 1 means cos 0 is 1. So slowly it reduces. Cos 90 is 0. So it will be, I am just drawing the cos. And then what is sine 72 degrees? See, if you know cos of some angle, how to find the sine of that angle immediately? So you know that, na? So sine square theta plus cos square theta equal to 1. Okay. So what is 0.3 square? 0.09. Okay. 1 minus 0.09. How much is that? 0.91. Isn't it? And then square root of that. So something like that, 0.954. Okay, so now you know this factor, this 0.954 you multiply with 0.6 and then you will get, so there are different ways of calculating that. So anyway, now let's go to the next level of understanding. So you understand this diagram, right? So I mu, IW and I naught, okay. But know that this is very less quantity, like maybe 1, 2, 3% of the total current. Okay, so you can actually neglect that also. So we'll come to that. Okay. Now, now I'll say from no load I'll make it on load. Okay, so that means there's some load on there. Okay, so on some load. Okay, so the moment I connect a load, what happens? So we discussed this last week. So if I connect a load, let me think of there is a switch here, and then I suddenly close that switch. Okay, then voltage is there, some impedance is there. So V2 by Z2, some current will flow. Okay, so let's call that current as I2. Okay, I2. I2 is a current flowing like this. Okay, now we are not assuming any resistance or any reactance here, so there is no voltage drop or anything like that. So therefore V2 is still equal to E2, these two are still same. Okay, some current I2 is there. Now I am asking a question, what is the phase relation between V2 and I2? What is the phase relation between V2 and I2? Are they in phase or are they 90 degrees, or how do you know? What is the phase difference between V2 and I2? Does that depend on this load? Because I2 is totally determined by whatever V2, with respect to that, what is the load characteristic. Okay, so transformer has no role to play in that. Transformer providing only V2, based on the V2, whatever load I connected, that load will have its own power factor. Okay, let's say this load is a R and L. Okay, inductance load is there, then the I2 will be lagging V2. If the R and C I connect, then I2 will be leading V2. So nothing to do with the transformer, depends on completely on the load. Okay. So now if I want to show it in the diagram, I'll draw it neatly here. So this is my V1, this is I mu, and then this is IW. So I get I naught here, and then this is my flux. Because of the flux, I get. See, right now I'm not drawing anything for E1. I'll just draw E2. Okay, E1 will reserve it. Okay. Now this E2 is equal to V2. Okay. Why? Because I'm not considering any voltage drops in this. It's a pure inductance, pure. There's no resistance and all this. Okay. Now what is I2? I2, and this is phi 2. Okay. So the value of I2, the value of phi 2 completely determined by what you connect here. Nothing to do with the transformer. Okay. So in this example, I have taken lagging load. Okay. The load is lagging by the angle of phi 2. Okay. So then what I said, what happens? This I2 will, see, I2 and N2 is nothing but ampere turns. So you know that MMF is measured in ampere turns. I2 current is flowing in N2 number of turns. So I get I2 N2 ampere turns. Okay, magnetomotive force measured in ampere turn. Because of this, I'll get flux phi 2. Okay, so now the direction of this flux happens to be opposite to the original flux phi 2. Okay, because this has to oppose the cause of its production. Okay, therefore the flux is becoming weak. Okay, when the flux is becoming weak, momentarily E1 also will reduce. Okay, because you have seen E1 is nothing but proportional to the flux. Okay, so suddenly E1 reduces, then V1 is more, E1 is less. Suddenly you start pushing more current into the this thing. Okay. Now how much current you send it? Let's call it I2 dash into N1. See, why I am writing I2 dash is this is unknown. Actually, I don't know how much current, but I know that some extra current is going. So I don't want to disturb the earlier current I0, which is already there. So I get additional current plus I2 dash. Okay. I2 dash is that current which is which is a result of flux becoming weak. Okay. Now what is this I2 dash into N1? That much current is linking with the N1 turns. Okay. So again it will create some more flux. So let's call that as phi 1 or phi 2 dash, whatever. Okay. Now phi 2 dash and phi 2 will cancel out each other, and then the original flux remains as same as we discussed last week. Okay. So these two will cancel out each other, only the flux will be remaining. So this, because of this, phi 2 dash will come, these two will cancel out each other. Okay. So that means the ampere turns creating the opposite flux and the ampere turns creating the main flux, additional flux, whatever. So these two ampere turns should be equal. That's why they both cancel out each other. So if I do that equal thing, I2 N2 should be equal to I2 dash N1. Okay, like that. So now I can write what is I2 dash. Because this was unknown, is nothing but N2 by N1 into I2. Okay, or I can write it KI2. Okay, where K is the N2 by N1. Okay. Now, so what is I2? If I know the N1 N2 ratio, then I can write the I2. Okay. Now I am asking question, will I2, where to locate I2? Should I write I2 in the same direction or in the opposite side? Okay. So just to indicate that these two fluxes are cancelling out each other and all, I can put exactly 180 degrees from this. See, magnitude I get from here, but the direction, I'll use the direction something like this. This is I2 dash, okay. And what will be this angle? Same as phi 2. This phi 2 will come here, okay, and then this is just going like this. Okay. So this is the component of current under no load, and under loading condition I2 dash is coming. So the resultant of these two, so if I complete like this, then whatever is the total current, that is my I1 current. Okay. So this is a total current I1. Now because I am taking I1 that side, just to I1 and keeping all the primary quantities on one side, I can now assume that E1 is this side. Okay. So then this V1 and E1 both are equal. So this will come like that. Okay. So just for locating it like that. Otherwise, what you have to do, I2 this side and all that, like that you have to consider. Okay. So that is the story for taking this. So overall, what you have to understand here is how the I2 is creating I2 dash. That's all. That's the main point here. Okay. So so let's do one quick problem. So again, what is the overall current I? So this itself is IW plus I mu, whereas this one is I2 dash plus I naught, and I2 dash is coming from the load side. Okay. So let me describe the problem then. Okay. So the problem is like this. So this is like 32.11 example in that book. So the given data is like this. N1 is 1000. N2 is 200. Okay. So immediately I can see it's a step down transformer. Okay. 5:1 kind of thing. Step down transformer. So I naught, no load current, okay, is 3 amperes at 0.2 power factor lagging. That means I can calculate this I naught. Okay. Okay. So secondary current I2 is 280 amperes. Okay, at 0.8 power factor lagging. Okay, so like this I2 value is also given to me. Okay. Strangely, V2, V1 values are not given, they are not required also. Because what I want to find out now is find I1. What is the current in the primary? Okay. So this is only the piece of data given to you. Okay. So first let's handle this current. Okay. So very easy. So what is IW? It is 3 into 0.2. Cos power factor is already given. So 3 into 0.2 is 0.6. Okay. What is I mu? So 3 square minus 0.6 square under root. Okay. 3 square minus 0.6 square under root. Can someone tell that? How much is I mu? Magnetizing component of current. How much? Okay, so thank you. 2.939. Okay, 2.94 amperes. Okay, so now I got these two. Okay, now immediately you notice this is like see, this is 3 amperes and this is 280 amperes, so almost 1%. See, this is a full load current in the secondary is a lot. Okay, like that. Okay, so this part is done. Now I2 value is given already. Okay, so what is I2? 280 amperes. Okay. What will be I2 dash? I2 dash. Because of this I2, some current I1 is coming. Okay. The voltage is step down. So the current will be step up. Because voltage is step down, 1000 to 200, the current will be step up. Okay. But then again I am coming from this side to this side, so current will again reduce. So I have to take 280 divided by 5. Okay. Where 5 is your transformation ratio. So, or K equal to N2 by N1. So that is nothing but 1 by 5. So I will write it something like this. I2 into K is nothing but 280 into 1 by 5. How much is that? 56 amperes. Okay. Now the question is, what is the angle for this 56 amperes? Okay. So the power factor is 0.8 lagging. Okay. So cos inverse 0.8. This I already know, 36.87 degrees. Okay, that is like very regular famous conversion. Okay. So the same angle I can apply. See here, with respect to this, phi 2 is like this. With respect to V1 again, phi 2 will be like that. So if I want to give the values here, so 36.87, and then this one I naught is 0.6. Sorry. I have already divided into components. So let me divide this current 56 into components. Okay. So what is the horizontal component of I2 dash? Horizontal component. It will be actually sine of 36.87. That will be 0.6 because 0.8 and 0.6 are cos and sine. Okay. So 56 into 0.6. Okay. So I2 dash, I'll write H, just to indicate the horizontal component. Okay. How much it will be? Sine phi 2 into I2 dash. Nothing but 0.6 into 56. How much is that? 6 5 is 30. 33.6. This is horizontal direction. So what is the total horizontal current? So I1 horizontal component is nothing but I mu plus this one. Okay, so I mu 2.94 plus 33.6. 2.94, 33.6. So 4, 5, 6, 36.54. This is the horizontal part of it. Okay. Now what is the vertical part? Nothing but 0.8 into 56, because the vertical component is nothing but this one. Okay. So I2 dash V, vertical part of it, is nothing but 0.8 into 56. Okay. 0.8 into 56. 8 5 the 40, 8 is a 44.8. Okay. Now this vertical component I have to add to this one, 0.6. Because this is working component, IW is also vertical. Okay. So how much I'll get it? I1 vertical component, how much is that? 44.8 plus 0.6. So 45.4 amperes. So now I can calculate I1, totally primary current. It is nothing but this and this. 36.54 square plus 45.4 square under root. Okay. So how much is this? $58.25. Now can you also tell what is angle? It will be nice to write it in the form of angle. So here, assuming that V1 is a reference, so what will be the angle? 51.2 is it? I want to confirm this. How do you calculate the angle? 45.4 cos inverse of, no, cos inverse of 45.4 divided by 58.25, because vertical is a reference. So how much will I get it? How much? 49.8 degrees. 39.8 degrees. Okay. Okay. So now you notice this angle. See, this is 36.87. Slightly it is more. This angle between V1 and I1. How much is that? Phi 1 equal to 39.8 degrees. Okay. So if you find the power factor, cos of this 39.8, it will be slightly less than 0.8. Because power factor of the secondary is 0.8 power factor lagging, power factor of the primary will be even poorer than that. So it will be 0.79 or something like that lagging. Why it is slightly poorer? Because in between we have this this one more lagging current is there. Because of that, slightly it is going like that. Okay, so I think the whole point of this thing is to just explain this component. I2 dash plus I0 is nothing but I1. Okay, so I'll write it I1 equal to add I2 dash plus I0. I0 you know how it has come, I2 dash you know how it has come from the secondary side. Okay. So quickly, if I change the problem here to leading, then what will happen? 0.8 power factor leading. So what happens is, I'll use maybe different color. So this I2 will be that side. This is my I2. This is 36.8 degrees. So I2 will be leading the V2 because the load is leading load. Now because of that, I'll get another current here. Okay. Exactly 180 degrees opposite to that. I2 dash. The magnitude will be 56, but this angle will be 36.87. Now when I add it, the components and all, we will have to change it. Yeah, the horizontal part we have to subtract, exactly. So see, so this 2.94 is here, and then minus 33.6. This will become minus the horizontal component of this. So how much will this be? Minus, okay, so minus 30.6. So I'm kind of solving the other problem with leading as a solution. So I get the horizontal is minus, okay, that means it is the other side, okay. Vertical will be exactly same, no change because of the way the problem is there. So here I have to write 30.6 square plus 45.4 square under root. So I'll get a different value of current. How much is that? 54 point. So now you also notice one more thing. For the same amount of active load, so the load is actually same, 280 amperes before, 280 amperes now also. Kilowatt wise the load is again same. Just because it is leading, now I have to give lesser current. Earlier current was 58, now it is only 54. Okay. So now what is the addition? So these two if I add, I will get somewhere like this. Addition of these two. If you do it with proper scale and all, it will be very good looking. So how much is that? What about this angle? How much? It should be, by the way, when I wrote the angle last time, it should be negative because I am considering V as the reference. So with reference to V, it is a negative angle. But now it will be positive angle. How much? 30? How much? 30.5 degrees? 34 degrees? Whatever. So you have to, using these two numbers, you can tell what is the angle. Okay. 30, let's call it 34 degrees. So this angle will be 34 degrees. So this will be V1 and I1. Okay. So we still have 15 more minutes. So let's try to now go a little more concrete. So I'll just remove this. With core losses and with copper losses. So now I am considering the resistance also. So the way it changes is simply like this. So everything is same, just only this two resistances I am introducing. Let us call this R1, so this is R2, and let's call this R1 because this is a primary resistance and this is actually the resistance of this winding, but I am drawing it outside to show that. So therefore this is terminal voltage V1 and this is the induced EMF E1. And this is the current I1. Okay, I1 is still the same thing. What is that? I0 plus I2 dash. Okay, so I0, where I0 is nothing but IW plus I mu. Okay, so that is still there. Everything is same except that I am getting this one. So simply by Ohm's law, you will get V1 equal to I1 R1 plus E1. So these are all vectors. Okay, so like this. Similarly, here I get E2 and this is V2 and this is I2, given that this is a load. Okay, so whenever there is a load, I get I2. Because of I2, I get I2 dash. If I2 is 0, I2 dash is 0. So you will get back to the normal this thing. Okay, so what is V2 now? E2 minus, so I2 R2. Okay, so this is again vector subtraction you have to do. Just again a Ohm's law. Whatever voltage is induced, some voltage is dropped, remaining voltage is given to the output. Okay, like that. Now for mathematical simplification, what you can do is I can take a equivalent resistance. Okay, so assume that I do something like this. So this is V2 E2, and this resistance I am not showing here, I am showing it somewhere here. So this one is R1, R2 dash. Okay, so these two I can add. Okay, so R2 dash is some kind of equivalent resistance which transferred, like R2 transferred from secondary side to primary side will appear as R2 dash. Okay, now the question is, what is the value of R2 dash? Okay, so what is the value of R2 dash? So very easy, we can tell. See, if it was here, how much is the losses? So I2 square R2. This much losses it is having here. Okay. Now if I transfer this here, how much is the losses here? I'll get I1 square R2. Okay. Exactly, R2 dash. And see, the problem is if I instead of I1 I call it I2 dash. Okay. So I'm neglecting the contribution of I0 in this, because I0 is typically very less. So if I neglect that, so I consider only that I2 dash current is flowing here. You know what I2 dash is. Okay. Now in all these things, only this one is unknown. Okay, so I can find out. So if I equal to this, such value of R2 dash which creates the same losses, either it's in the primary or in the secondary. So like that. So these are losses which come naturally like this. Otherwise, mathematically, this is the losses on this side. I want to equate them so that I can remove the R2 that side and put it this side. So what is R2 dash now? R2 dash is R2 I2 by I1 whole square. Okay. Or I2 by I2 dash. Okay. But anyway, we know if it is I1 or I2 dash or whatever, we know this relation already. Okay, so this is like 1 by k. Okay, so R2 dash is nothing but R2 by k square. Okay, so yes, we are neglecting that. So the I0 is also passing. So actually the current here is I0 plus I2 dash is passing through this. But the argument is that the component I0 is very less, and to make the calculation easier and all, we will just neglect the I0 and then take only I2 dash, so that I get this easier. This, see, I can cancel this and then put 1 by k. Okay, so it will become k square. So just by knowing k square, I can find out what is R2 dash. Okay, now this whole thing I can give another notation, R01. Okay, total primary resistance after considering both sides. So something like that, R01 is like a notation. Okay. Now you can also write in other way. Okay, instead of transferring R2 from secondary to primary, I can transfer R1 from primary to secondary. In that case also losses should not change. Okay, so what I will write it, I1 square R1 should be equal to, this is not I1, it's I2 dash square R1 should be equal to I2 R1 dash. Okay, what is this R1 dash? Something new which is coming on the secondary side. Okay, so what is R1 dash? Nothing but I2 dash by this square here, square into R1. Okay, so this is again K, so it is like K square into R1. Okay, so I can do like this to know what is this one. So anyway, I'll write it here. Maybe here I'll write it. So R01 equal to R1 plus R2 dash, which is equal to R1 plus R2 by k square. What is R02? Nothing but R2 plus R1 dash, which is nothing but R2 plus k square into R1. Okay, so these two are like very intuitive. Okay? You can just easily derive them. Okay. Now I can explain the same thing with another conceptual, another thing added with copper losses and with leakage inductance. So what happens with leakage inductance? That means all the flux produced by this coil is linking with the other coil. That's the ideal transformer. Some of the flux is not linking. Okay. Some of the flux is only interacting with only this one. Okay. So just to model that, we introduce another inductance outside. Okay. This is called X1. This is called X2, and then the same calculations will apply there also. Just by observation, I'll write it. So, see here, you will immediately understand what I'm writing. So, what is x01? Nothing but x1 plus x2 dash, okay, which is nothing but x1 plus x2 by k square. What is x02? Nothing but x2 plus x1 dash, which is nothing but x2 plus x1 into k square. So, this is like entire reactance shifted to primary side, or the entire reactance shifted to secondary side. So like that I can. Now I can define Z1 equal to R1 plus JX1. So this is the impedance of the primary side only. Z2 is the R2 plus JX2. This is the impedance of the secondary side only. Okay. Now I can write V1 equal to I1 into Z1 plus E1. Okay. So some voltage is dropping in this impedance. So these are all vectors now. I apply some voltage is dropping, remaining voltage is coming out as induced EMF. Okay. On the other hand, if I want to write what is V2, then I'll write it I2 Z2. This will be having minus sign. Okay. So I'll write it E2 minus I2 Z2. So some EMF is induced, but out of that induced EMF, some of the voltage is getting dropped. So the remaining voltage is coming out at the terminals. So these are these are all Ohm's law. Okay. Now you can also write what is Z01 is nothing but R01 plus JX01. So just taking this one, and then you can define it as a total impedance referred to the primary side, okay, and then total impedance referred to the secondary side. Okay, so immediately you notice that it's all just application of notations. Okay. So all these things. So yeah. So actually, I want to solve one interesting problem, but we'll do because we have only 5 minutes left. I'll just give the question so you can try it. You can try the answer up to all the details, but then we'll start the next class by discussing the answer to that question. Okay. So just I'll give the question now. So I'll use this place to write the question. So this is an interesting, important question on transformers. So the following is a data. Following data of a one-phase transformer. Okay, the data is like this. Turns ratio N1 is to N2 is nothing but 20 is to 1. Okay, so this is a turns ratio. Okay. So instead of giving the turns, they can give the ratio also. Okay. Now the parameters R1 equal to R2 equal to X1 equal to X2 equal to. So 25 ohms, 0.06 ohms, and then 100 ohms and 0.25 ohms. Okay. So this much impedances are given. Okay. So notice that there should be a J here and all that things you should consider because it's a reactance. You have to consider it properly. Now I naught is what? You know, it's a no load current in the primary side. Okay. So that is 1.25 amperes. This is just a confusing leading flux by 30 degrees. Okay. It's a confusing way of telling the same thing. Okay. So what is actually the angle between the V1 and I naught? 60 degrees. They are just confusing you on basics. So that's actually the way that they framed the question. Okay. 1.25 amperes leading the flux by 30 degrees. So something like that. So don't get confused. Now the secondary, okay, I2 equal to 200 amperes, terminal voltage V2 equal to 500 volts. Now notice that this V2 is, see, R2 is also given, X2 is also given. So that means some voltage drop is already there. So E2 will be definitely more than 500. So that you will find from your calculations. And the power factor, okay. So at 0.8 power factor lagging. Okay. So this power factor is with respect to V2, terminal voltage and terminal current is a power factor. Okay. So that's all is the question. So find out all this. This is the information given to you to find V1, okay, cos of phi 1. That means power factor of the primary. Okay. And you have to find out iron loss and you have to find out copper loss. So this iron loss is fixed actually because the flux is fixed irrespective of the load, but this copper loss depends on how much is the load. So it is assumed that for a 200 amperes of load, how much is the copper loss? Okay. So then if I know iron loss and copper loss and if I know the output, so what is the output? V2 I2 cos phi 2, that is the output. So 500 into 200, that is 100,000 into 0.8, okay, some 80,000. That means 80 kilowatts is the output. Okay. So how many kilowatts is the losses, and based on that I can find out the efficiency of the transformer. What is the efficiency of the transformer? Okay. See, can you tell one thing? The ratio is 20:1. Okay. So if 500 volts is at the terminals, what should be at the terminals of the primary side approximately? So if I take 500 into 20, I'll get 1000 volts. Okay. But the answer should be more than 1000 because there are some drops in between and all that. Okay. Like that. So this all you have to find out. Okay. So can I quickly give the outline how to do that? So how do you solve this? Just draw the circuit like this. V1, this is I1. This is E1, E2. This is V2. And this is load. Okay. So this is R2, X2, R1, X1. Okay. And I naught is also given. So I naught is also given. So what you have to do first, so just stop noting down, just look here. How do you solve it? V2, I2 is known. Okay, so I2 is known. So I'll mark it with a different color. So I2 you know, V2 you know. And the power factor between them also you know. Okay. Now you know R2, X2, so you can find out what is the voltage drop here. That voltage drop you add it to V2, you will get what is E2. Okay. So for this entire calculation, what is your reference voltage? V2 would be your reference voltage, 500 angle 0 degrees. Okay. Then your E2 you will get some angle. Okay. Now what you do is, after calculating that, now assume E2 is your reference. Then E1 will be exactly opposite to E2. So E1, then practically E1 will be your reference. Okay. So E2 you calculate, then you know E1. Then what is I2 dash? Because you know I2, and I2's angle is with respect to V2. So you have to carefully find out what is the angle of I2 dash with respect to E1. Okay. Then I0 also you know. This is leading flux by 30 degrees. Okay. So again, you know that E1 and flux has 90 degrees and all these things. So basically you have to manage the angles properly. And now you multiply, you can add these two and then multiply with R1, X1. Then you will get the voltage drop. That voltage drop you add it to E1, you will get the V1. Okay, that much steps you have to do it. So you might even try to write a small program to do it instead of hand calculation. Do it in MATLAB. It is more easier. And once you get V1, what is cos phi 1? You know V1 angle, you know I1 angle, then the angle difference between that is cos phi 1. Then what is iron loss? Iron loss nothing but V1 into I0 into cos phi 0. Okay. So cos phi 0 also given to you based on this angle. So iron loss you will know. What is copper loss? So you can either do I2 square R2 plus I1 square R1. So if you do this, you will get the copper loss. Okay. So you know the output. The output you know, losses you know, you can calculate the efficiency. Okay. So all these things. You try this. Anyway, we'll do the same thing in the next class. Just the initial time of next class, and then we'll go forward. So with that, I'll stop.